Welcome back to Torch Talk, your flashlight enthusiast podcast on YouTube. This is Torch Talk number 4, and in this week's episode, we'll be taking a look at which 10440 light is right for you, the proper way to lube your lights, using Kapton tape and modding, and later in the show, we'll talk to the one and only Joshua Dawson, owner of Dawson Machine Craft, which was formerly Laulima. And I couldn't do it without my co-host, Artie Trudell.
Hey guys, Artie Trudell here.
All right, let's start out with our first segment, which is Flashlight News. In Flashlight News, there is 3 things we want to talk about. First off, let's go to the group buy at TK Lamp. We covered this earlier, which was a flashlight integrating sphere for your house, right? Like for testing your own lights. But what's great now is there's this group buy going on where if you go to this website right here, and I'll zoom in on it, they're selling this thing at $3.99 or less if they can get more than 10 people to sign up. But what's great is they just added logging capability via Mac and Windows via USB port. So it's the same thing that I showed earlier on our last Torch Talk, but now it's got logging for people that want to do flashlight reviews. So that is awesome.
Fireflies or fireflyoutdoor.com, that is Firefly Light now, had worked with a emitter manufacturer to come up with 2 new LEDs with that one there, the FFL 505A.
Yeah, this one right here.
Yeah, it's a great SFT40, not replacement, but just like a competitor, I'd say. It's got a round eye, and the more people I talked to recently, they're fond of the round eye because there's not a lot of round eye LEDs. I know
it has a different look in reflectors for sure. It's sharper, more concentrated.
Yeah, and I think they like the aesthetic of it.
And this one is 3500K, so it's a great CCT. It's 95 CRI. It's rosy, you were saying.
Yeah, and I was measuring it in a reflector like this and getting 60, 70 below BBL. It doesn't look really pink like a 219B SW45K, like one of those older SW45K would look, but it looks really kind of neutral. No green at all, obviously, but when you measure it, it's really low.
Well, I think the reason it doesn't look as rosy as an SW45K is because it's 3500. I mean, if you look at the chromaticity chart, you can see that when it's warmer like that, it's more of a yellow orange than a pink green. But let's move on to the last thing we've got in our flashlight news, which is the Firefly E07X Canon, which you said people are now getting. And this is important because of the...
So that is coming with the optic that was in the E07X Pro, which is a more throwy 10-degree optic. So for a 7-emitter light, they ship it with a domed 519 or this other new LED that they came out with. That's a high-intensity emitter. But even with the domed 519A, it's a pretty throwy beam because of that 10-degree optic.
And so then it's got this really throwy optic with 7 of them. So it's this weird kind of dichotomy where it's a ton of light because there's 7 emitters, but it's not floody like you'd think. It's actually really throwy.
It's really throwy, and it's got like a pretty defined hotspot, and there's no tint shift, which sometimes happens when you have multi-emitters like that with a throwier optic. It really balances it well. I love that they kept that optic for that.
And you and I don't have one of these yet, but Jack's going to send me one of these, and so once I get it, I'll bring it on the show and talk about it. But I have high hopes.
Yeah.
And now let's head into our section, Flashlights 101. Now, there was a bunch of talking recently about the proper way to lube a flashlight, and I thought, I did a video a while back, which was okay, but honestly, I think, I got it down pat now. I've really thought about this. The reason you're doing it is mostly for your threads, right? It's just the fact that you want these threads to feel great and you don't want them to feel gritty. But here's the problem, here's the dilemma, is if you look at your driver, you've got an electrical path where the positive, I'm off camera, the positive on your battery is going to go towards the center, and the negative of the battery down here is going to come up through the body, through the threads, to the outside of the driver. So if you're lubing these threads up a lot with any lube that's dielectric, and that they pretty much all are, it's going to actually screw up the electrical path, and that can cause driver issues. It can cause like stuttering, flickering, all kinds of weird things. So contrary to popular belief, you don't want to lube your threads. Properly machined threads shouldn't seem gritty. I understand wanting to add a little bit. If you want to, that's on you. But this is an older light, and you can see this red. That's not rust. That's actually kind of a brown lube that Hank was using back when he got this. It's about a 3-year-old light. But what I'm going to do is just on camera really quickly, I'm just going to show you how I would take care of this. So when you lube your light, you're going to lube the O-ring. That's pretty much all you want is the O-ring, and you're going to leave those threads bare. Now, I like to use Fancy Pants Nano Gel 760G, and the G stands for the fact that it has a glow ingredient in it, so you can actually hit it with a UV light and see where you've applied it. I use alcohol in a decanter like this to go ahead and remove, existing lube. And I'm just gonna take the battery out, and I'm gonna just use a Q-tip, and I'm just gonna hit this thing like this and kind of mash it in. And you can see that it's getting clearer as I do that. See all that stuff that I got off there. And let me do a little more. And you can talk while I'm doing this. What do you got?
Yeah, so I see you're using the Q-tip. Like, could you use a paper towel, microfiber rag? Is there a best way to do this? I feel like I always get this wrong.
Okay, microfiber's fine. I would not use a paper towel, because here's the thing. Q-tips are made of cotton. Cotton is cloth. Yep. So cloth will be fine. But the problem with a paper towel is it's wood. And you don't want wood fibers in your threads. So no, not paper towel. I used to say, well, hey, you can lightly use a paper towel just to get the extra stuff off. But I don't even do that anymore. It's not worth it. So, go ahead.
I would say I figure people might default to it. So it's good to know if there's a better way to do it. But that makes sense with cotton being the best option.
Toothbrush. So I'm not going to hit it with the toothbrush until I take the O-ring off. So the O-ring, you take it off with like with a toothpick here. Just kind of get it under there and flip it out. But just use a toothpick, get it off. Use a toothbrush, just kind of go at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I do, and just get all that stuff out of there. You can wash the toothbrush later if you want. But see, that's pretty clean. That's good. So, and it doesn't have to be perfect because there's a lot of surface area here, right? So now the purpose of the lube was to keep your O-ring from deteriorating and making a great seal on the light, right? So what I like to do is I take this lube, I just put it a little bit in the gutter here, like this, the gutter where the O-ring sits. And I might even clean the O-ring. I'm just going to use my fingers right now, but I could use a microfiber cloth. I'm just getting most of the gook off. And then I'll just throw it in that channel. Let's get focus on it again. So you can see that I put the gook in the channel first, put the O-ring on top. Now I'm just using my finger just to kind of like spread it evenly over the O-ring. And that's it. That's all you want to do, because then you get the O-ring nice and lubed up so that it'll make a good seal, won't deteriorate. And then the threads are nice and and by the way, with a light like this, I'd probably clean the inside as well. But for time, I'm not going to. And you can see that it's making great contact already. You can see as soon as I turned it on. So there you go. That's the way to do it. Leave those threads clean. Now, if you want to put a little tiny bit on the threads just because you're into it, that's fine, but realize that it's counterproductive. It's not great. And lastly, I want to point out that as far as the lube itself, what should you use? And you want to use something that's silicone-based. So you can see this is synthetic grease. It's silicone-based. This super lube, you can get this on Amazon pretty cheaply. This is all silicone-based. There's basically two types of lube in the world. There's silicone-based and petroleum-based. All the O-rings you're going to find on flashlights are silicone-based. And so you want to use a silicone-based O-ring so they don't deteriorate. If you use something like white lithium or let's see, motor oil, that's petroleum based in most cases, and then it'll deteriorate. I've actually had that happen on my Hank lights when I first started out.
Yeah, interesting. Now, does cleaning the threads and all that with isopropyl alcohol, does that deteriorate the O-rings as well, or no?
Not in my experience. In fact, the isopropyl, the IPA, and I use 99%, so it has nothing like water or oil in it. It's just pretty much IPA.
Yeah.
That'll just kind of like once you hit it with the O-ring or the threads with that IPA, whatever lube is on there just kind of breaks up and comes off really easily. So that's actually how you remove it. So I hit it with the IPA to remove it, and then I just re-lube. And as I said, I used to do a lot of lube on threads because I used to really overly be concerned about like how they felt, like how gritty they were. So, titanium, and this is titanium, has kind of like a grain to it, and I'd kind of turn it and I'd feel it, and I'd over lube it, honestly. And then, especially on a light like this, where there's not a lot of surface area, because it's such a tiny light, it was creating like flickering at like low amounts. And I finally figured out, I should not lube the threads.
Yeah, that's really good information. I was always curious about if it helped or if it hurt. I always find myself cleaning the threads when I get the light, putting some lube on, and then wiping most of it off.
I've seen some manufacturers that want lube to feel good. What they'll do is they'll very lightly paint it on with a brush. But again, don't glob it on. I was even guilty of saying at one point that you should glob it on, but it's dielectric. It actually screws up the electrical path. And, just to get off topic a little bit, but this is kind of one of those cool things that we, sometimes do talk about. If you look at a light like this, which was in my pocket, one of the beauties of David Livingston's design with the cool fall is that the cap here is, you see the springs? The path is unimpeded by any lube you'd put on this ring because the springs go from battery to battery. And so there's nothing to stop it. Whereas, if you look at all these round lights, every single one of these round lights, the threads, you put lube on them and it kind of stops the electrical path. So it's just an interesting thing. Now we're going to go to Modder's Corner. And in Modder's Corner, you've got something you're going to talk about, which is the use of Kapton tape.
Kapton tape, however you say it, is something I didn't really use in the beginning, but if you're getting into reflowing emitters, if you like single LED lights with reflectors especially, Kapton tape, I don't really know the technical term for it, but you put it over the leads of the light so that you're not going to direct short the light, essentially.
It's an insulator is what you're saying. It's an insulator. And it's also, and here's another interesting thing, is made for the space program, right? Because it's high temperature insulating tape. So if you get hot, like an emitter or with a driver or an MCPCB, it's not going to melt on you.
Yeah, that's a good point. And obviously it's in the most hot part of the light because it's right next to the emitter. So I think you have some photos of some rolls of it. And it comes in different widths. I went with a 2-inch wide roll, but you can get any of the widths. And what I do is cut it off in small pieces. I don't have my tools with me, but you're only putting small amounts of it over the leads and then over the MCPCB. And this is especially if you're using a reflector light. And in this picture here, I wrapped all 4 sides of the LED in it, but it's stopping the reflector from shorting out on the leads and creating a direct short and blowing your driver. Or the other thing it can do is if you have a mechanical switch light, it'll burn out the spring and ruin the switch in the light as well if you catch a short. But most of the time it's going to blow the driver, and this is going to stop it directly. Now, one thing is if you're looking at these photos, cleaning every surface that you're going to touch this tape with 90% plus isopropyl alcohol, because it will not stick. Because if you're using flux or anything like that and it's melting on the board, this stuff will not stick to anything unless you clean it first.
Yeah, like it's greasy unless you get that stuff off there. There's just that's what I noticed. I hated using Kapton tape because it would never stick, and then you're the one that was telling me you got to clean it really good.
Yeah, because I have other people that I tell, like, hey, it's really important, use it when you're doing them on. They're like, it won't stick to anything. Like, especially if you see here is covering the wires and the solder blob, like, you want it to be all cleaned and wiped down with 90% plus. I think I use 93% because it's easy to find. But after that, it'll stick really well. I just run the tips of my tweezers because I use tweezers like this. I run it over it really kind of hard all over the surface where it's touching the MCPCB.
Hey, let me see those tweezers close up.
These are actually, so And
you mean these ones?
you get the same one.
We have the same damn tweezers. All right.
Yep.
That was not rehearsed.
Nope.
Yeah, did you get them from the iFixit kit?
Yes.
Yes, that is a great kit. And I was going to talk about this in a moment, and it just organically came up. But in the iFixit kit, there's both these, and I use both these a lot. The ones on the right, the pointy ones, I use for like Pineapple Minis for getting the driver re-tightened.
Yeah, and I'll use them to put engines into lights that have threaded engines.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Is on the Pineapple Mini, there's no retaining ring, so you got to put it through the two holes in the board and snug it up.
Yeah, they work great for that. Yeah, those little kits are awesome. But those might be a little pointy for pressing down the Kapton tape, but the other ones that you showed or the ones I have are really good for it.
Right. Let's go to the overhead. Yeah, you're talking about these right here. These ones right here. Yeah, these are good. So there's my fingers for sizing. So so Kapton tape. No, thank you for bringing that up. I know that a couple times I was working on something. It was an RRT01, and it's got an aluminized single reflector. And you're right. It's like if the blobs are too big. Here, let's go back to this. On the negative and positive wires there, then when the reflector comes in, you'll just do a direct short on the driver, and it'll pretty much blow it up every time. Just fry the driver. So that's where the Kapton tape is really good.
Yeah, it's excellent. Like, I have blown more drivers or switches than I can even count at this point. And in the beginning, I actually had done it for other reasons, but covering the leads with Kapton tapes it's an essential. I do it every time, even if I'm doing something with an optic, just to be safe.
Now let's take a move to our product highlight, and it's going to be actually kind of a 3-product highlight because we're going to be talking about the 10-440 shootout. We're going to be talking about the Pineapple Mini from Raylight versus the Hoku Clicky from Josh Dawson, and we're going to see him later in the show. And lastly, the CWF Microclick. So these are the 3 that I think are worth looking at. There's more than this, of course, but you and I are both into like good machining, and I feel like these are, okay, maybe this is not a custom light. The Raylight's probably not a custom. I don't know. What do you think? It's arguable, right? It's like mid-tech, and we're going to get everyone mad at us, right?
Yeah, he definitely toes that line. I think it's hard because the price point's not, because I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
The price point is just astronomically better than the other two, and I want to point that out. So we're going to talk about 5 things. We're going to talk about the price, size, the beam, button, and then the driver itself. And so price, you can get this in titanium for what, like $50, $60, something like that?
Something like that,
yeah. And then this right here in titanium is about $379, and then in titanium this guy is about $479. So these are both $400 or $500 lights. When you're up that high, I don't think that the $100 price tag is a big difference. So I'm not going to say that this one is better for being $100 cheaper. But the thing is, if you want to, for a long time, and I'll just say this right now, I had a bunch of Pineapple Minis, and I refused to buy one of these two. It just didn't make sense to me. It's like, if I can get these for $50, $60, why would I ever jump up to the $400 or $500 range? And I think a lot of people in the audience right now are going, yeah, you're an idiot. Why would you do that? But I mean, right? It's like, it doesn't make sense, right? But the thing is what I figured out is that, I had like gobs of these guys. I had like 12 at one point. And then I realized that I don't really need 12. But what I wanted was the best I could get, and that's when I finally got a Microclick, and it is better. It's just better. So let's talk about it. Okay, so size-wise, they're all pretty much the same. As you can see, they're all very close. I'm not going to get at the calipers. Maybe the Raylight's a little skinnier and smaller. I will also point out that when you look at the reflectors here, let's get those lined up. Look at the reflectors, you'll see that the reflector on these two is about the same diameter, but then there's a thicker bezel here, and then this one has the biggest of the reflectors. And when we talk about beam, I do think that the Microclick here has the throwiest beam, so we'll get that in a moment. But let's also talk about So let's talk about beam now. So when we talk about beam, first off, the Ray Light's going to come stock with a 519 A right now. So Ray cares about the emitter he's using. By the way, this is a smooth. He also has a ribbed version, and then he has the frag, and the frag is going to look like this with just like cutouts on it. Frag, for whatever reason, is actually my least favorite, so I don't have it. This is also his pen light right here. So it's double long. I should point out that these drivers are dual fuel, meaning that you can use alkalines in them or 10440s. And the 10440, as I said, looks just like an alkaline, but it's actually a lithium ion. And the thing is about that is I used to really care about that. I used to think that the alkaline compatibility was a big deal. But then I found out that it just doesn't run as long. There's less energy in the cell. So what I'm saying is if first off, it runs less lumens. So it will be like, it'll top out at 200 lumens on this, where, with this, it'll top out at like 400 lumens. Right. So that's one thing. But then the second thing I found out is lumen for lumen. If I run this at 50 and I run, the 10440 lithium ion at 50, this runs longer because there's more wattage in the cell. So that's something I had to figure out.
Yeah, and I also agree. Like, I used to I'm more of a 14500 AA light guy, and I used to really like the dual fuel compatibility until I just never used AA's. Maybe I'll have one light that I'll keep in my car with a AA in it, because living in cold weather climate, it gets cold and they die, but the majority of my lights in that size aren't running AA.
I also understand the idea that you're like, oh, I'm backpacking and I don't have a charger and I could just go to a campsite and somebody will have a AA or I don't know, whatever. But I understand that kind of idea of compatibility. But in day-to-day use, EDC, right, in my pocket, I'm finding that it just doesn't make sense to ever run alkalines in these. So expressly on the driver, let's just say that these two are lithium ion only. You have to run 10440. These two are dual fuel. But again, it's like I don't miss on these that compatibility. Also, this one comes, so you can put two AA's in it to get the 3 volts you need, or it comes with this extra long 104. It's not 10440. It's double that. So I forget the name of it. Do you remember the name of it? It's like 10880, right?
Well, maybe that's what it is. I thought it was a 10900.
Yeah, it probably is 10900. That sounds right.
But basically, you can't run two 1044s in that because it'll be too much voltage.
Right. Yeah, you'd blow it up. So the range it'll accept is from 1.2 volts up to like 4.5 volts or something. And if you run so thank you for mentioning that. If you run 440s in it, you're going to be running 8.4 volts. Driver will blow. Something else I just want to touch on really quickly is that to be able to run dual fuel, it's boosting, right? And boost is inefficient. So that's another strike against running alkaline, because the emitter needs 3 volts. And so if you're boosting 1.5 volts up to 3 volts, you're getting about 40% efficiency. So something to be aware of. Now, I also wanted to talk about the beam and the button. So the beam, these guys are kind of similar to this one, and this one stands alone, meaning that these are throwier and this one's kind of floody. So if you know that you want like higher candela, more, let's say, contrast, I would definitely get one of these guys. The most contrasty one you can get is the microclick, and I'll show you right now that about this distance, you can see there's the hot spot and there's some spill. But then on the Hoku at about the same distance, you can see how floody it is. And I'll come up a little bit on this. So one, two, yep, there we go. So you can see that it's just a floodier light. And I was, you can see that I was on the max right now. You can see how much more intense that hotspot is. Now, we talked to Josh Dawson, and he says he likes floody lights. So this is intentional. He likes that. So if you like floody lights, I would go Hoku. If you want more candela and more intensity, I would go microclick or the ray lights. Let's take a look at the ray lights comparatively.
And just to add something real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
440 size is the size light where, like, I always prefer throw and a throw rear beam, but that's the size light where I feel like it's bordering on maybe you would want for flood, because people are generally going to use it as a work light. They can put it in their mouth to hold it to do hands-free tasks, like if you're an electrician or something, because it's a small, lightweight light. So some people might carry one and want it floody.
Well, just really quickly on screen, I'm hearing you. I just want to point out that this, I think, is slightly floodier than what I got going on with the microclick. But I also want to point out that this is a domed 519A, and this is a de-domed 519A, so that would give it more candela. Also, I want to point out that Charles does not sell it with 519A. He sells it with 219C, which is higher lumens, but less CRI and more of a tint lottery. So, but these are modifiable. They're pretty easy to get into. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about the button, and then I'll talk about the driver retaining ring, and that'll be on my shootout. So the button, I think by far the worst button is on the Ray light. It's just mushy. It's hard to kind of get what you want. I think that he's made improvements, but I don't think it's great. This button on the Hoku is pretty good. It's definitely better than the Ray light button.
Is that a forward clicky or reverse clicky on the Hoku?
These are all reverse. They're all reverse. I think that in this size, you just don't get forward. Because the forward has an extra part, an extra piece in it.
Yep.
And anyways, but the best button by far is the CWF. And I took it apart once, and I found out why it feels so rock steady, and like it's hard to explain until this is a feel thing, and on camera you can't tell the difference. But what's going on is if I take this apart, he's got little like shims and washers. He's got like this button has like 9 damn parts in it or something to make it feel the way it feels. Whereas you take this one apart and it's just a button and like a ring and a rubber boot. Yeah, it's just it's less pieces.
It's nice on that Ray light because it's a metal button, but there's not enough support, so it rocks and it grinds. That was always my problem with the Ray light button.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's just not great. And it is kind of cool that you can get like options like, so here is the old style button that he always included. This one was probably the worst. I mean, I don't want to say that in a bad way because it's still pretty good. But the thing is then the newer button got better, and this is Damascus, and you can see that even this cap here, this guarded cap, kind of helps a little. So it's gotten better, but if you can't justify a high price point like this, then these are great. I mean, don't even look over here. But if you can justify this price point, these are clearly in a league by themselves. They're just much better. So I would say that going back to here, it's just what you'd expect in that the lowest priced one has the worst button. This one has a markedly better button, and then the best buttons over here. And then lastly, I wanted to point out the driver. So these are dual fuel. And they're mode group drivers, meaning you get to pick from 4 different groups of power levels. Over here, this one has, I think it's like 8 mode groups. But one of the things so it's a better driver. One of the cool things about it is that he has a retaining ring right there. So that retaining ring is something you just don't find on flashlights of this size. I said earlier that I was going to tell you about the pokey tweezers and why they come in handy. So you can see that this driver in here is just screwed in, and so that's why the pokey tweezers are so important, because the battery, it has friction. Every time you unscrew it, it kind of moves a little, and over time you could think that your light has failed because it won't turn on, and really it's just not making good contact. So what you do is you take these guys, you stick them in the holes right here, and you just snug it. Mine's snugged already, so I'm good. But yeah, you just twist it a little bit, and you don't have to go super hard on it. You just snug it.
Right, just so it's not loose.
But I love that. Joshua Dawson has that retaining ring. You just don't find that in a light this size. And then the very last thing I want to say is we were talking about drivers and the differences. the Chimera driver in this micro click is the best in my opinion. It also has mode groups. It has more of them. It has reversing options. So one of the cool things you can do is you can click it on to go to Moonlight, and then I can press in for a second, like half press, 1001, let go, and I'm on turbo. So it's got a shortcut to turbo. And if I do that 1001 again, 1001, you can see I got strobe, 1001, and now it's doing a battery check. So it's got battery check built into a really tiny size driver, and it's the only driver of its size that has thermal management. It actually has thermal management, so that's pretty interesting.
That's really interesting. I actually didn't realize that it had battery check.
So there you go. That's my 10-440 shootout, and I guess what I want to say is, if price is an object, these are not good enough to eclipse how advantageous the price is over here. However, if you value American customs and you like exquisite machining, Joshua Dawson does an amazing machining job, as does Charles Wiggins. And I gave you a lot of differences, but at the end of the day, do you want, pointy or floody, basically? Which one do you want? That's what it is. Also, I want to point out this is aluminum. This just happens to be aluminum model, and this is all titanium, and it's got the TAD laser engraving. But these come in all different kinds of finishes and whatnot. So this is a twisty. That's why it's shorter. This one doesn't have a click on the end. But you can see it's titanium, and it's got the brass, head here. Yeah. In fact, what I want to point out, which is really kind of cool about Josh's setup, he really does. He really caters to the enthusiast. Check this out. With no tools. Watch this.
Are you taking a bezel off there?
Look at that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no tools. And it's got an O-ring. So it's like totally made to get into it really easily. So, I mean, really easy modifying there. And so I'll just make sure that I get that lined up around the emitter so I don't hose it. But yeah, I mean, I just don't know of many lights that are designed to come apart that easily. So it's totally modifiable. I've got one of these that has a mule on the front with no reflector and a spacer. But I also want to point out that over here on Charles's end, this is the standard bent pressed clip, stamped clip. It's stamped out of titanium. And then this is the milled clip, and you can see it's got a different profile. So nice. Yeah, it's really nice, but the price goes up a lot. I think it's $100 just for the clip. So, and then this is Mokutai, and this is also this is his stock emitter. This is the 5209C. So I wanted to show you that before you got the wrong impression on what his lights look like. So here is my modified 509A de-domed, and here's his 209C. And you can see they're both very throwy. It's a little bigger hotspot over here. Also notice that this seems very rosy, and this seems a little greenish. It's 209C. It's a little bit above BBL. So that's pretty normal. So it's one of the reasons why I swapped it out.
I don't really own 10-440 flashlights. I definitely want a micro click just because of how much you talk about how much you like it. And the throwy beam, and it seems unique in the 10-440 market.
I think if you're going to own a 10-440, you should start with like Ray Light, and then I'm talking about anybody, not you.
Yep.
I know you should just start with the micro click, but I'm just saying that anybody should start with the Ray Light, and if you really like it, then I would move up to one of these, depending on whether you want the beam to be focused or floody. And I know that you and I both like focused, so I tried this with a bunch of different emitters, and I found that the de-domed 509A was nice and tight and hard. I found that the 209B actually didn't play nicely in it at all. So I tried a bunch of emitters, but the 509A de-domed is great in this, and I know that's not a lot of runtime because it's a tiny 300 milliamp hour battery, but it's so lightweight, just disappears in your pocket. I think it's for me, actually, I carry it as a secondary light, and the reason why is because I've got this really expensive Cool Fall in a pouch, and it's buried in my pocket, and this is the one I clip. So when I need to light really fast, I just pull it out, and do one of these. And then if I'm going to be using a light long form, I'll pull this out.
That makes sense. Yeah. And the typical EDC, your 330 mAh is probably fine. I mean, you're not turbo blasting it. If you need it for quick light throughout the day, using it for a half hour total, that's a fine size battery.
Right. And honestly, if I was going outside and taking a walk, I would just get the cool fallout and use it. The reason why I clip this to my pocket is because it's for when I'm in like a store or something, I can't read some fine print on a label. I just, and then I do one of these. I just do it real fast. So. And now we go to Joshua Dawson of Dawson Machine Craft. That's formerly La Lima Custom Flashlights. And I have a bunch of his flashlights. He's just a master. So let's go to him live now. Hey Josh, how you doing?
Good, how are you guys?
Well, so we're glad to have you. I hear you have a couple new things cooking, like you have a new 18650 single with I think an MCR 20S?
Yeah, I actually do. So it's the latest light that I've been working on. It is, as you said, it's an 18650, and it's going to use a 20 millimeter Machismo reflector. You guys kind of pushed me that way. I had originally planned on using an 18 millimeter, but made the jump to the 20. So it's my first 18650, and I'm really liking it so far.
You're getting ready to ship these out, right? And these are shots from various stages?
Yeah, actually, this weekend I finished all the machining, so all the parts are machined, and now it's just time to do the final finishing and the assembly. And then Mitch has all the clips finished.
Mitch is still doing the clips?
Yeah, Mitch, my partner, he does the clips, and he builds some of the engines, so it's still a collaboration. Still just Mitch and I, even though we changed the name to Dawson Machine Craft.
I noticed that you're using a retaining ring to keep that pill and driver in, which I think is great.
Yeah, so I decided to use a retaining ring just to help modders out. Normally the engines... Normally the engines are they're peened and then soldered in place, but this way with a retaining ring it makes it easy. You can remove that retaining ring and very easily replace the driver and pull the whole engine assembly out.
If you look at the stuff that Jeff Hanko's doing, he solders the driver to the pill, which I don't mind because I can unsolder that. But then
that's what we've historically done as well.
Yeah. Jesse Hayes over at Citadel, he stakes it, which is my least favorite because then I have to kind of like deform the pill to get it back out and then restake it. I think the retaining ring is definitely the best way for me.
Yeah, I really like doing it that way. I started doing that on the Hoku first, and it worked really well on that, so that's why I did it on the 18650. So I'll probably be doing retaining rings on all the models, even the Slims.
So that's not something you're going to find on the Pineapple Mini or the Microclick with Charles. It's just I think you're the only guy doing it right now.
So does the driver still sit inside the pill, and then you put the whole pill in, and then that retaining just clamps it into the pill?
Yeah, so on this 18650, the pill still screws into the thread, and then the driver sits on a little shelf on the pill, and then the retaining ring screws down on top of that. And it secures it, kind of double secures the whole thing in place.
So there it is with the retaining ring in place. You also did a post where you were talking about this little accent right here. You were talking about the fact that historically you had like one bump here, but you're going to have two.
Yeah, so I added an additional ring. That was actually suggested by a collector because he likes to cigar hold his flashlights. So you can put an O-ring on it, which I thought was a pretty cool idea, so I went ahead and implemented that. So
so I guess the
little extra grip.
When you release these 18650s, they're going to have the double then?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
awesome.
All of them have that double ring now.
Do I have to hunt for that O-ring, or are you going to include it?
They'll be included, along with a battery.
See, one of the things that always impresses me about you is how many different models you offer and how many different finishes and just designs on those models. But see these little accent differences on the top here. I happen to have two that look very similar, but I mean, I can see like 50 different versions of this where they're all like, there's swirls and, there's so many different versions. And I think it's interesting that, well, the way I take it is that it's obviously harder for you as a maker to stock and kind of like keep changing what you're doing. It would be easier to assembly line it if you're doing just 3 models. But it seems like you were an enthusiast yourself and you love making the light that people want to buy.
That's exactly why Mitch and I decided we just have so many different models and so many different designs. I personally get bored easily, so I don't like machining the same thing over and over again. So, like when I start a new batch, I'll start playing around with different milling patterns. Like on this 18650, this will be the first design. I'm sure we'll have, probably 2 or 3 designs out of 18650. But again, I just get bored easily, and I like to change things up. I don't like to machine the same things over and over. And it's easy for me because I actually do the machine. I have the equipment. So on a whim, if I get an idea, I can go to my machine, start programming it, run some prototypes, and kind of tweak a design until I fall into something that I like. Makes it harder as well because we have so many different designs.
Right.
They're all over the place. It would be very nice just to do like one design of each cell size right now. That's just not what we do. And I am a collector, and I just love machining, and I love having different unique features. So that's kind of why we have so many different models and designs.
The Starfall, this is one of the, pride of my collection. And, you guys made this for me and you did the ano and everything. I did get it polished up. You guys had like a satin finish and I got like a high polish from another guy just because it takes so long. I think if I'd had you guys do it, it would have cost like a lot of money.
Yeah, I think I even told you that I won't do a polished finish.
Yeah. I love this light. I mean, I think it's such a pretty light. I think it's really great. And you told me that it was a toe dye without the cuts on the edges. Is that true?
Not on that model.
Oh, okay.
So the Wayfinder is a toe dye without a flats mill.
That's what it was. That makes so much more sense. Yeah. Now that I look at the Wayfinder, it's the Wayfinder without flats.
Yep.
Totally. Yeah. Are you bringing the Wayfinder back, do you think, ever? Or is that a done?
I actually love the Wayfinder. It's one of my favorite lights. The Wayfinder with the swoop head is my favorite of all the lights that I've made, I think. But not very popular. Just like the clean, the curves, kind of round body.
So you're not opposed to making it. It's just you're not going to make a bunch of them if they hadn't traditionally sold fast.
Yeah, correct.
I think the look and the name of it is so apt. I mean, it looks like a nautical, like a spyglass, like, a pirate would have. It's really cool. I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have a name yet for that 18650 single?
No. So, it is still unnamed. In my Facebook group, you guys may have seen it, but I put up a little post about needing name recommendations. And a lot of people added some great names, but nothing has really struck me yet.
Okay.
So, I don't know. I need to name it soon, I guess. But yeah, I do like the Hawaiian names that were suggested. So, as you know, we have a lot of lights with Hawaiian names. But,
look at this guy down here. He's
not sure.
Look at this guy.
I do like the color.
With 5 upvotes. Look at that. Oh, look, and I got a shill. 2 shills.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, anyways, thank you for joining us. It was great to talk with you, and I can't wait for the new 18650. And as I said, I'm a big fan of your lights. I have, a bunch of them. And, as I say, I think that it's amazing to me how much you listen to exactly what the customer wants and incorporate that. So many people would just, make business decisions and say like, well, this light, I'll have less returns if I glue this in, and as you said, you're listening to the minority and doing what the minority's asking for. And I think that's really excellent.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I really enjoyed it.
I like bronze. So
bronze. I'll remember that.
Okay, cool.
So that's our show. Thank you for joining us today. And don't forget to like and subscribe so that you'll be notified when Torch Talk number 5 is available. On behalf of Artie, I want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.